Hey everybody, in this video we are going to talk about the incident history section. Now this section is a little bit different than the other sections in that we're not actually surveying things that your school has as far as countermeasures or fences or gates or those kind of things. What we're talking about here is what type of law enforcement events have happened at your school or the surrounding schools in your area over the last 3 years. So let me get into that section by going here to assessment, and then it's the section down at the bottom here, incident history. Now, as like all the other sections, we start out by selecting the things that are true in this section background. What this is going to do is it's going to do the same thing. It's going to create a very short survey for each of the things that you select. So let me just show you that first. I'm going to do this a little out of order from what I normally do. So I'm going to go in and say, it's going to say, has there been at least one incident of arson at or nearby the school in the past 3 years? Now what we're talking about at or nearby, the definition of that, at least that we're using, is at your school district, or at a school that's within driving distance, within 15, 20 minutes of your school. So in a close area, so that's the basic demographic of your area. Now, by default, we are going to, this is not even going to ask you about active shooter or those type of issues, because we're just going to assume that that is a threat against your school. And we're going to, in the threat assessment report and the vulnerability report, we are going to assume that active shooter is pretty much the reason you're doing this survey. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, has there been at least one incident of arson at or nearby in the past 3 years? So I'm going to just say yes, and then I'm going to click save and reload, just so that you see what the questions are that you get. So the questions that you'll get for each of these is this type of incident reported to law enforcement? Do you have a policy in place for handling this type of incident? Would you consider this type of incident to be an ongoing problem? And then who has been committing this type of incident? So if we have arson, is it students committing arson? Is it students or parents' families committing arson? Former students, parents, or families, faculty or staff, or unaffiliated outsiders? Then the next question down is, in the last 3 years, how often has this incident occurred? Is it once, more than once but less than 5 times, more than 5 times but less than 10 times, or 10 times or more? So there's some of these categories that if they happen 10 times or more, that's going to really be an outlier. But some of them do, things like theft. So in the past year, the first question is in the past 3 years. Then the next question is in the past year. Then we're going to ask you, how confident are you that all of the incidents of this type have actually been reported? Are you very confident, mostly confident, somewhat confident, or not confident? So because we went through that first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here to the top, and let's look at the different types of law enforcement events that we are looking at here. So select all that are true. There's been at least one incident of arson at or nearby the school in the last 3 years. There has been one incident of vandalism at or nearby in the last 3 years. There has been one attempt of kidnapping. Now this includes parental kidnapping in the last 3 years. There has been at least one threat made against the school in the past 3 years. Now in this case, this one is actually about the school, and it's not about the surrounding schools. There's been at least one incident of weapons possession at or nearby in the last 3 years. There's been at least one incident of weapon possession with something other than a firearm in the past 3 years. There has been at least one incident of robbery with a firearm in the past 3 years. There has been at least one incident of robbery without a firearm in the past 3 years. You kind of see where we're going with here. So robbery is more of a holdup. That is, somebody is coming up to somebody and just flat out robbing them. When we get to burglary, that is somebody sneaking in and stealing something. And then when we get to theft, that is like something like you're stealing something off a table, but you didn't necessarily break in to do it. Okay, has there been at least one incident of assault by a non-student? Has there been at least one incident of assault by a student? And has there been at least one incident of a vice crime at or nearby in the past 3 years? So when you select these, the things that have happened, and hit save and reload, it's going to come and ask you about the same questions that we've already gone over. So now what I'm going to do now is look at the section overview questions. Okay, these are just about how often things happen that you report. So how regularly do incidents occur that are reported to law enforcement? Less than once per month, more than once per month, but less than once per week, more than once per month, but less than once per week. Those are the same. More than once per week, but not daily, daily, or almost daily. Just so you know, anything you see in this video that doesn't look right, I put in a trouble ticket and fix. They were right in the past. Something happened that it's not at this point, so I will get these fixed. How often do incidents occur on campus that require law enforcement assistance? I don't see the buttons here, but that will be all the same buttons you see at top. How often do incidents occur on campus that are not reported to law enforcement? Less than once per month, or less than once per month, but not once per week? Okay. So those are the overview questions. And then, as we talked about before, we talk about the different type of incidents, and these questions are the same for every one of the sections. So what we're building here is kind of a threat matrix. What we are going to do is, in addition to active shooter, that we know is an issue that we're looking to prevent, these other things like arson, vandalism, kidnapping, threats, weapons possessions, robbery, burglary, theft, assault, and vice crimes, those require different countermeasures to be put in place to prevent those than the countermeasures that you're just going to put in place for an active shooter. So since we're doing the security vulnerability assessment, there is no reason for us to just focus on the active shooter. Things like kidnapping, including parental kidnapping, they're a big deal. They may not be an active shooter, but they're definitely still a big deal. So we want to make sure that those are covered. Theft, burglary, robbery, they're all things that we want to make sure are covered. So in this section, you may need to you might need some law enforcement assistance. If you want to reach out to us, we do have crime stats. Now, we have general crime stats for the areas. We don't necessarily have school-related crime stats. The general crime stats that we have for the areas, we are going to include in the report anyway. So by default, if you are in a high crime area in your school, or you're in a school that just happens to have a lot of vandalism or happens to have a lot of arson, the report that's generated from Protective Security Survey will include those type of crime stats. Okay, so this is incident history. Again, this is one of the more important sections because it helps determine what the correct answers are for a lot of these other sections. So there's answers that no is a perfectly good answer, or yes is a perfectly good answer if there isn't a threat of kidnapping, but there's answers that are more important if you've identified that through your incident history that we're going to have a threat of, let's say, arson, vandalism, or kidnapping. Okay, so again, this is one of the more straightforward but daunting sections. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, and we are happy to assist.